Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's time to talk real estate with Laura Bramnick from talkrealestateaz.com. That's the website where you can find out more. talkrealestateaz.com. Laura Bramnick is a real estate agent, also an attorney licensed through the State Bar of Arizona, specializing in real estate. And I always say that's a tremendous combination.
As we say, Sinclair, it's a twofer.
It's a twofer with Laura Bramnick. That's right. And you also work in residential, commercial, and land transactions.
Yes, I do.
So you can help with all sorts of stuff.
And if I can't help, if I can't be the one, I can help find somebody who can.
That's great.
Yeah.
Because you are a consumer advocate for your clients.
Yeah, there's certain situations that call for a super specialist, and at least I can help the client identify that and get them to the right person.
So if you have any questions about real estate, whether buying, selling, or if there's a problem and you need help with that, 480-624-2705. 480-624-2705. One of the things that we've talked about many times is whenever it comes to real estate, get it in writing.
Yes, in order to enforce your contract, with very few exceptions, it has to be in writing, signed by all parties.
And that applies whether you're buying, selling, or renting.
Yes, or renting. And so if you're in a tight market, whether you're a prospective buyer or prospective tenant, that's when it's even more important to get it in writing quickly. Because at least in Arizona, the tenant or buyer, they make the offer. So they put their offer in writing and send it to the seller through the seller's agent or the landlord.
Right.
And then many times the agent will call and say, oh, the seller or landlord accepted your offer.
Okay.
And a lot of people then make
Plans.
They make plans, especially a
They
tenant.
spring into action.
Yes, they make arrangements to move, and if you're a buyer, you make arrangements with your lender. And many times what happens is the seller or landlord will basically hold your offer to see if anything else comes in. If something higher comes in, they basically say, unless you meet this higher offer, you're out of luck. And it's legal, but in my opinion, unethical.
Kind of is trying to start a little bidding war.
Yes, and you know, if you're waiting to see if more offers come in, my opinion is you have an obligation to say, I'm not going to accept your offer right now. You know, a verbal acceptance, even though it's not legally binding, people rely on that, and it's not a good way to do business.
So put a time limit on an offer?
Yes, and the Arizona contracts have a time limit on there, and so that's good. So there are ways you can protect yourself, but protecting yourself means, okay, if they don't respond, your offer's not accepted. You know, it's very hard without the seller's signature to bind them to a contract.
Now, I would imagine that this gets to be a little bit more problematic when we're talking about a rental situation, because it's not as common to get that in writing.
Correct. That's correct. Many times rentals are done verbally, over the phone or through email, maybe not signed, and in a sales situation, it's a little more formal. But you can be renting someplace and your lease is up and you need to find a place to rent and you thought you found one. And I've read articles where people are afraid they're going to be homeless because they thought they had a place to move to and they didn't. So the issue is, what can you do? What can you do? Well, first of all, do not rely on anything unless it's in writing.
Get it in writing. Rule number one, get it in writing.
You know, just assume if it's not in writing that it's not binding. and you cannot enforce it.
Well, is that really the case? Because if somebody says, well, it wasn't in writing, but they had agreed to something, can the landlord then come back on the potential renter and vice versa?
No, you can, if you're the buyer or tenant, you can make the offer only binding if it's signed by the landlord within a certain period of time. And so if this happens to you, apparently this bidding war in certain areas that are in high demand has become common. And there's a code of ethics. Realtors in Arizona and throughout the country, most of them belong to the National Association of Realtors.
Right.
And they basically say the code of ethics that they subscribe to is that your obligation to your client is primary, but you must treat all parties honestly. And so this is not honest treatment. And in Arizona, if you have a complaint against a realtor, you can go to the Arizona Department of Real Estate. They have a website and they have a forum that you can file a complaint online. And they even have a fund that realtors pay into, so that if you're damaged, you could get reimbursed some of your damages or expenses. However, it's a long road. You actually have to sue and get a judgment before you're eligible for that fund. But local boards deal with ethics complaints.
Best advice, I think, is what you've been telling us for a long time, which is get it in writing. And before you sign it, know what you're signing.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes there are several pages of kind of boilerplate language, and it can be a little bit boring to read through it, but you need to read through it and understand that there are some things that may not be just strictly boilerplate. You need to understand if there's something a little out of the norm that might not be what you really wanted to make part of a written agreement.
The other issue is that if it's something you really want and the landlord has all the power, understand that you're assuming some risks. In other words, if you really want this certain place in this certain area and the landlord says, no, I'm not going to sign right now, don't rely on getting that contract in your favor, so that you're gonna, it's a matter of risk reward basically.
Yeah.
But don't get blindsided by a verbal promise.
Yeah, verbal promise, worth the paper it's written on.
Correct.
Laura Bramnick, and of course you can help with this entire process, whether it's buying, selling, landlord-tenant issues. If there are problems that come up, you can sometimes help resolve those problems, find some sort of resolution.
Yeah, and don't rely on a verbal agreement by your landlord. In other words, if your rent is late, maybe you've been injured and out of work and you're waiting for your disability and
Get it
verbal,
in writing.
yeah, because they will tell you it's okay, and then behind your back, they will contact their lawyer to evict you.
Laura Bramnick, 480-624-2705. Good number to have. 480-624-2705. And you can always find the contact info at the website. Very easy to remember this. TalkRealEstateAZ.com. TalkRealEstateAZ.com. Laura, thank you for the reminder. Very important. Get it in writing.
Thanks, Sinclair.